Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look from the Streets, Physical Distancing Edition. My name is Cianri, and today we are going to be talking about education during the COVID-19 pandemic, the adjustments, the changes, and the continued changes the Department of Education has been making and will be making in the future. Here with us today, we have the Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor, who's going to be having a conversation with me just about some ideas and some decisions the department and the Ministry of Education is doing. And again, Mr. Taylor, thank you very much for sitting down with me and just having this casual conversation about education, education during COVID-19. And welcome again.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here with you.
Excellent, Mr. Taylor. So my first conversation piece, what I'm going to ask is, the coronavirus and its resulting lockdown has changed the format of education, okay? And I want to know whether the Bahamas, whether the Ministry of Education was ready for this new type of online training, online education, virtual training. Were we ready for it?
Well, first thing I could say is that I don't know that anyone in the globe was completely ready for this COVID-19 era. Clearly, there are a lot of things that we are only just understanding now about it. And so, to be quite candid, the answer would be no. However, it doesn't mean that we were completely unprepared to deal with some of the things that we have to now deal with. So for instance, we've had to move most, if not all, of our instruction from face-to-face in-person instruction to virtual instruction. And we've been in a position to prepare ourselves to some degree for that from some of the other activities that we've undertaken earlier in the year. So in September, for instance, we launched our virtual school, which catered primarily to students in the southeastern Bahamas and in small communities across the Bahamas, where we have enrolled about 400 students in order to ensure that they get access to classes that they ordinarily wouldn't get access to. So students in Maguana, students in Black Point, Exuma, and in other small communities across the Bahamas, we've already put in a virtual learning program that has been going on for about 6 or so months. Also, when Hurricane Dorian came, we took that same virtual school platform that we were using, and we introduced it to the Abacos in order to support the secondary school students in Abaco who had moved back to Abaco, but the schools were not ready. And so one of the ways in which we cater to their learning is through virtual learning platform. What we have now is on a completely different scale. We're talking about all of the students, all of the teachers, and it's a much larger remit. So we don't have all of the dimensions to it clear and worked out and all of that. But having had the experience that we had already starting in September with virtual school for remote communities and also virtual schooling for students who were recovering from disaster of Hurricane Dorian, it gave us not only some sense of a platform, but some sense of confidence that we could move into this new area. And even though we don't know everything, that we could more or less successfully navigate it.
Okay. I know you mentioned the students and you mentioned the teachers. And I want to know, what would you like to tell the teachers now who are stepping to the plate to make sure that our students, our children are being educated? Like what message would you basically tell them?
Well, in addition to saying thank you to all the teachers and school administrators and curriculum officers and others who have responded to ensure that the education of the child or the children in their charge still continues, even though the physical school is closed down. So in addition to telling them thank you, I also want them to be aware that this is what it means to respond to our core goal. Our core goal, our main goal in education is to ensure that the right of every single child to a quality education is attained. And the fact that those who responded, took this so seriously and in some instances moved even before the Department of Education said to move, shows that they are indeed committed to that goal, which speaks well to them or of them as individuals and also as professionals. So on behalf of the Minister of Education and the Ministry and the Department of Education, I'd like to thank all those persons who answered the call, teachers, uh, school administrators, curriculum officers, district superintendents, and even parents who are ensuring that their children are indeed taking full advantage of the opportunity that we're providing.
Okay, excellent. How are we ensuring that all of the teachers have the adequate skill to be computer savvy, have access to the internet, that they understand these new programs that they're using? And how are we doing that, or how is the ministry ensuring that all of the teachers have that type of skill in education?
Well, let me just say that for some time now, the ministry has been focusing on ensuring that our teachers had the kinds of ICT skills that will enable them to navigate in this new dispensation. From the early 2000s, we offered professional development training in the use of computers and the use of particular software and so forth. Of course, we've intensified our efforts over the last several years. We have now a curriculum integration, ICT curriculum integration specialist in the ministry. And a big part of our job is to help teachers to know what technology there is that can be used and integrated into the teaching, and also to provide training. And so over the last several years, we've been doing a lot of training in the use of ICTs in the classroom setting. But since school closed for COVID-19, we have had at least 14 workshops that we put on for teachers. Most of them, if not all of them, virtually conducted, in virtual means. One training that we have was in the use of Zoom, for instance, where over 2,000 teachers signed up and participated and completed that training. And then we have had all sorts of other trainings that, we had hundreds of teachers participate in. So in terms of the skill development, some persons, they already know these skills, so they don't even need any training, right? And then for the others who require some support, we've been systematically offering training courses for them. You asked a question about how else are we supporting them? Well, in terms of internet connectivity and so forth, well, that right now is something that we are not able to do in terms of providing to each teacher's house the internet connectivity. We would expect that what has already happened will continue to happen, and that people would use whatever connectivity they have to support this work. We are prepared to make our school premises available to teachers, but of course there are some issues around the social distancing and how exactly that's managed and so forth. But that's one of the things that we wanted to do, and that we're still prepared to try to find solutions. If school has to be closed for any extended period of time, how is it that we can make the school available for any teachers who may want to conduct classes and engage with their students but don't have these resources at home? We've also provided some individuals with devices, not many, but as time goes on, we hope to see how we could provide teachers and school administrators with more devices.
Excellent. I'll ask more questions on that, but we're about to take a break. This is a closer look from the streets. I am C.A. Nuri, and I'm interviewing, or actually having a conversation with the Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor, and I'm excited to get some new information. We'll be right back.
Self-isolation means taking simple steps to avoid close contact with other people as much as possible, as you would with the seasonal flu. If you have been in close contact with somebody confirmed with COVID-19 or suspect that you have it, self-isolate for 14 days. You can self-isolate by staying indoors and away from family for 14 days. Choose a well-ventilated room with a closed door. Household members should stay in a different room, or if that is not possible, maintain a distance of at least 3 feet. Use a sealed waste basket and double bag your waste before disposal. Limit movement in your house. Stay in your assigned space away from the rest of the household. The caretaker will bring food and anything else you need. Use separate cookery and cutlery. Use a separate bathroom and clean it regularly. Use separate towels, separate cleaning linens, and clothing. If you are in need of care by household members, limit the number of caregivers. Assign one person who is in good health and has minimum risk conditions. Most importantly, remember, do not invite others over. Should you or anyone you know feel that you've been exposed to the coronavirus, contact the COVID-19 hotline at the Ministry of Health immediately. To reach us, call 376-9350, 376-9387, 300-2619, or our 24-hour hotline at 502-7382. For more information, visit covid19.gov.bs.
This public service announcement was brought to you by the Ministry of Health and this television station.
And welcome back to a closer look from the streets, the physical distancing edition. My name is C.A. Murray, and I'm actually having a conversation with the Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor, and we're talking about what type of tools the Ministry of Education has enabled the teachers with in order to ensure that the quality of education continues. And before the break, the director went in detail about what they're doing to help the teachers in terms of training. But I wanted to ask another question in regards to the tools specifically. Do the Family Island teachers in general have computers, laptops, tablets to ensure that they interact with the teachers, with the students?
Well, you might recall that at some point, the Minister of Education would have indicated that the Ministry of Education was rolling out a program of providing devices to students, and starting off with students in the preschool level, and then moving our way up the education system as the resources permit. So right now in schools, we have resources for persons at the pre-primary level, and the teachers to go along with that. I think every teacher has a laptop at these different levels. The rollout was in train. Some persons have received, but not all persons. And so some persons would have access to those government-issued devices. But I'd be the first to say not a lot, and certainly not all the teachers. But as we continue to roll out in that program, the idea is to ensure that teachers get a device. But you know, at this point in time, we have to put everything in perspective. The country is in crisis, a crisis completely not our doing. And the thing is, it's not just a local crisis, it's a global crisis. And so, you know, the typical teacher in this day and age would have their own device, their own laptop, their own tablet, whatever else. And we call on them to utilize those devices in the zero. Everyone in the country is making some sort of a sacrifice. So I don't think it should be too much to say or to ask someone that if you have a device, and knowing the situation that we're in, until such time as the government is in a position to do anything differently, that you utilize that device to the benefit of the students and to advance the work. And I think many teachers are doing that, and without a problem doing it. You have some who don't have devices, and that's legitimate, and we'll have to see how we could deal with that. But you know, this is a time where all hands ought to be on deck, and people shouldn't really be, you know, counting the nitty-gritty. You know, I didn't get a device, so therefore I wouldn't do this. I would expect that people would see where we are and the need for us to continue the education of children.
Understandable. And I see in the host assembly recently, the minister said that we have students registered to be a part of this virtual training, right? But the participation is low. I want to know what is the Ministry of Education plan to do to counter this, or to find out what is happening? Why aren't there many participants in the program actually who are registered versus who are actually participating?
Right. So just so we can be clear, 26,000 students have signed up to register to participate in the virtual learning program that the ministry has going on at this point in time. On a weekly basis, we had 2 weeks so far. The first week we had about 12,000 students who participated on average in the first week on daily average. And then in the second week, we had an average of 11,000 students participating on a daily basis. So while we're not happy with that proportion, because that means only about half of the students who signed up are actually participating on a daily basis, we're still talking about 11,000 students minimum participating. So that in itself is good. But we see that this is a global challenge, that there are many students who are not able to participate for various reasons. Clearly, we have more than 40,000 children in our schools. So the first question is, why is it that we only have 26,000 and not the 45,000, right? And so some of that would be that some students just don't have devices or they don't have access to the internet. But some is also, some students have not registered, I would suspect, because of indifference. Some students just not registered because they're not interested in registering. So what is it that we're doing? Of course, we are trying to see how we could develop accountability mechanisms so that utilizing teachers and school administrators and others, that we could find ways as best as we can to contact students and to encourage them in a very deliberate and specific way to not only sign up, but participate in the online learning opportunities. And then also the ministry is thinking that if internet connectivity is one of the factors, that perhaps we ought to consider complementing what we're doing in terms of online learning with television, which is an accepted form of distance learning mechanism. It's not as good as the online learning because naturally with the online learning, you get two-way communication where the teacher can say something and the student can respond. With television, you don't get that immediate two-way engagement. And so it's not the preferred model, but it's certainly a model that can complement what we're doing over the internet for those who may have challenges with the internet. And then, of course, we have to continue to say to parents and say to students that we will do our part, which is to provide you with tuition instruction, but you have to do your part, which is to participate. So we have to continuously encourage people to participate. You know, in 2000, the cry around the globe was, how do we improve access to education? And in 2015, we largely felt that we have dealt with education access issues, and now we're only looking at quality issues. But if this change is going to be sustained change in terms of people having to get their education remotely, then we're going to have to figure out what are the kinds of access issues we are going to have to address, because there will be many students who, because they're not forced to come to a school building, who will not participate for one reason or another.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Actually, we have a question from social media, and I'm going to bring Leah in, who's our social media correspondent, and she's there now. And she just want to pose a question to you from the social media platform where we have some questions there. Go ahead, Leah.
Yes, Mr. Taylor. My first question for you is, considering the postponement of the final and national exams, what is the game plan for report cards?
Okay, so in terms of all of those decisions around assignments and report cards and national school-based exams and national exams, we have taken an approach that at this point in time, we do not want to make any public pronouncements on them, simply because, one, we're being guided by the health professionals in every step of the way. And until such time as the health professionals could give us a sense of even when we might be expected to return to a physical school campus, or when they're clear that we'll not be able to do it for the rest of the year, then we don't want to make any public pronouncement. And part of the reason why is because if we make a decision at this point, let's just say we were to say, well, okay, we're going to cancel school for the rest of the year. But next week, the public health people come and say, you know what? it's all safe for everybody to go back. We would have already made a decision that the public would say, oh, you already told us that school is canceled. And then we'd have all the trouble in the world to restart things. And so we know that people have these questions. We know that people might be even a little bit anxious about the answers to these questions. But we want to be in a position when we make a pronouncement that we are pretty confident, unless some radical change comes up, that we'll be able to stick to the decision that we've made. So that's really why we haven't come out with a concrete set of dates for all of these specific things.
Okay, I guess it's too early to say if you guys were considering advancing students to the next level or just repeating those students. It's too soon to say.
Well, it's certainly too soon to say, because that would then be a decision based on the other things that we just talked about earlier. But just let me help you to understand why these things might be a bit challenging, right? You have some students who might be in grade 12 already, may have already done their BGCSEs in grade 11, and are pretty much ready to go on to university. If we say that they can't graduate, then that might have implications for them going on with their career when they may feel that they can go on and not necessarily need to finish the next 3 months. That's on one side. The other side is if we decide to say, okay, let everybody repeat, then we will have the challenge of accommodating the new students who are going to come in. So the new students who are coming in grade 1 will then be impacted by this, because there will be some kind of clogging in the system. So it doesn't mean that this mightn't be a decision that we make. And if we make that decision, then we'll have to deal with it. All I'm trying to highlight is that every option that you exercise, it has pros and cons, benefits and drawbacks. And we have to be sure, well, not sure, but as confident as we can, that once we make a decision in a particular way, we could deal with the consequences that will come as a result.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Leo. Social media always have these deep, profound questions. Right now, we are having a conversation with the Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor, and he was just making us acclimatize as to what may happen, what may not happen, but things are still pending, basically. And I'm enjoying this conversation. But right now, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back. This is a closer look from the streets.
We all have a role to play in this. I thank all of those in the front line of this battle for their courage, for their compassion, and dedication to the health, security, and well-being of Bahamians and residents.
If we all try to fix the gaps, if we all try to come up with strategies to limit community spread, if we all focus on the health of our people, we will do better during this crisis. We must work to preserve our economy, our vibrant culture, and our natural wonders, with millions of visitors from around the world. This today is a national fight, and we all have a role to play in this crisis. It is a battle for which we must all be prepared. We bear a personal responsibility for our personal health and the health of our loved ones, especially older parents and children. We will not stop. This battle we will win, and this battle we will conquer.
welcome back to A Closer Look from the Streets. I am C.A. Nuri, and I'm having a conversation with the Director of Education, Mr. Marcellus Taylor. We just finished doing that social media question, but I have a question for you. Mr. Taylor, there are a number of students who are doing classes, virtual classes with their teacher privately, right? They're not on the government's platform per se, right? I know I saw one or two public schools, the teacher has created a online program for them because they know their students, etc. Is the government monitoring or evaluating, taking into account that platform and that education system? I'm not sure if my question is, will these students who are doing that lose out?
Well, well, obviously it depends on what exactly is being offered, and and that might vary from platform to platform, teacher to teacher, school to school. But let me say this: we realize that there are some teachers who have already gone ahead and done some things. But what we have determined as colleagues is that if people are going to make efforts to do things, we are not going to interfere with it. Because at this point in time, we want students to be reached in any way possible with something that is constructive and productive. These are the same teachers who would have been teaching them if COVID-19 didn't come, and they would have been in the classroom doing it. So we gotta have some level of confidence that what they're doing virtually stands up more or less with what they would have been doing in the classroom. What we didn't want to do is to use a kind of approach where we say, everybody has to come onto our system, and then we end up losing people. Now, certainly we need to be responsible to the public, and we need to be able to say to the public that this is happening or that is happening, so many children are in school, etc., etc. And I think we will get to that as time goes on, when we are able to work out the accountability mechanisms and so forth, so that people are able to report on what they're doing. But we do not want to crush innovation. We don't want to crush initiative. And we want to ensure that the ultimate goal is the one that happens, that students learn. And that could come in any medium. That could come in any vehicle, right? As long as it's forward movement. And so as time goes on, yes, we want to know what people are doing. We want to make sure that it matches what we're doing. We want to even consolidate resources so that we could have impact on more people. But at this point in time, our approach is not to stop or discourage any of these independent actions, but it is to encourage it, and then in time bringing it all together.
Good. A quick question: will there be a report card day?
We will make that decision, and we'll let the public know as soon as we make it.
Moving forward, if the national exams are postponed, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen yet, right? The policy makers. And I don't want to do any what-if type questions to you, and forgive me for this, right? If the exams are postponed, what about the scholarships that based on the exam? How will that come about?
So, different countries are doing different things. And before you even get to the issue of scholarships, you'd have to think about entry into universities. What is it that universities are going to do to determine who gets accepted or who is not accepted? That comes before really the issue of scholarships. So scholarships is only a mechanism to facilitate when people get entry into college or university. And so these are the kinds of things that we're trying to look at and we're trying to monitor. If universities sort of globally determine, you know what, we will just go on the records that students already have, and we're not going to worry about exit exams like BGCSE, but we'll take them based on the record that they have. We know students who've come from that school before. We can look at their transcript and we can kind of match it up and kind of get a sense of students. Then having the national exams becomes less important. Although, there are people who want those exams who will not go to university, but they will become less important in terms of the mechanism of determining, and then the dates might be more readily pushed back to another time that is more convenient. But if universities are going to hold a hard approach that, no, we're going to use our same requirements to get in, and you still have to have it in the same time frame and so forth, then we're going to have to respond to that. So these are some of the things that we have to look at, monitor, and then try to make the best decision to accommodate all of these different dynamics.
I noticed that the Ministry of Education, and I'm very impressed by this, by the way, continued the lunch program, right? That was very impressive. I would like to know, how is that being administered since school is closed?
Right. So we've tried. We've had some challenges here and there, primarily in the city areas, in New Providence and New Providence and Freeport area, I should say, where the collection rate was low. But we suspect that collection rates were low in part because transportation issues, the public transportation system was closed down. Also, I think we tend to use the more established media, and a lot of people don't use the established media all the time to get their information, so they didn't always know and understand when they should pick up, where they should pick up, and so on. So what we have decided is to revert to the distribution of vouchers at school sites, that you go to the same school that your child or that your ward ordinarily goes to, and you collect them there. So we have been able to distribute one set. Of course, those who didn't collect would also be able to collect their voucher the next time around. And when we deliver the next set of vouchers, then people would go to the schools and they would collect either the new one only or the new one and the old one if they didn't collect the last time.
Excellent.
So we'll be doing it from school base.
Excellent. Mr. Taylor, I truly appreciate this conversation. I got some understanding on what is happening with the Ministry of Education, how it affects students, how it affects the teachers, and I appreciate you taking the time to go into detail and to relieve us of some of the concerns. So thanks very much for sitting in with us.
Well, was not only my pleasure, but it's my obligation to try my best to give the public an understanding of where we are. We're doing our best to serve them in this kind of time because we know that people are anxious about so many things, and whatever we could do within our capacity, within our ability to move the society forward, but specifically the education of children, we're prepared to do it. So thank you.
Thank you again. And once again, we'll be having a conversation with Marcellus Taylor, Director of Education at the Ministry of Education. And we were just having a conversation on what exactly is the Ministry of Education doing during this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic. Again, my name is C.A. Nuri. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you for the last 7 minutes.